All right, we are back with another reaction here. We have Napoleonic Wars Battle of Vitoria, 1813. I was told in the comments that this is the next one chronologically, even though it was added after the other ones. So we'll do this one, and then I'll have this reaction out, and then the Battle of the Nations as well, today even. So this one will be out probably within, I don't know, an hour or two. And then the Battle of the Nations will be later tonight. So both of them will be out. Just figured I'd knock out two of them in one day. So, you guys, thank you for all the comments on the last one and all the videos and all the subscribers. I appreciate it. Let's get into it. I'm excited to see Wellington again. So it's been a minute since we saw him in the British. So this is exciting. Turn this down a little bit here. There we go.
May 1813. While Napoleon's Grande Armée began its fight back in Central Europe following the disastrous invasion of Russia, 1,200 miles away, at the other end of Napoleon's embattled empire, another enemy was poised to strike. The previous year, Wellington's Anglo-Portuguese army had won a brilliant victory at Salamanca, but been held at Burgos and forced into a long, demoralizing retreat back to the Portuguese frontier. But after a winter of rest, reinforcement and training, Wellington's army was stronger than ever. 100,000 men, many of them battle-hardened veterans. And for the first time, he had sufficient cavalry and artillery, while transport and medical services had also been improved.
Okay.
Morale was sky high. Their chief, known to the troops as Old Nosey, was cheered wherever he went.
I like that.
"I never saw the British army so healthy or so strong," Wellington informed London. In contrast, the French position in Spain was weaker than ever. Napoleon severely underestimated the threat posed by Wellington, and had just withdrawn 20,000 French troops for his own use in Germany. As commander-in-chief, King Joseph knew his forces were overstretched. Napoleon allowed him to give up Madrid and move his capital to the more easily defended Valladolid. But withdrawing further, to a strong position like the Ebro River, was out of the question. That would send the wrong message to neutral Austria and Napoleon's wavering German allies.
Okay.
And so, with serious concerns, Joseph and his chief of staff, Marshal Jourdan, awaited Wellington's offensive.
In a few days we shall take the field. The campaign bids fair to be most brilliant. I hope to see the Pyrenees before September. Okay. Yeah, so I mean, according to the video, I mean, look, the British army is ready to roll, ready to rock.
Wellington's plan was for his army to advance in two wings, concentrate at Toro, then move against Joseph's forces. In the south, Murray's Anglo-Sicilian Spanish force, based in Alicante, had just repelled an attack by Marshal Suchet at the Battle of Castalla.
So is this the first time we've seen Sicilian troops? So every time we see the map, it looks like Sicily is always like colored red, even though like all of Italy was blue under Napoleon, right? But like Sicily was its own entity, or it was part of the coalition in some way, shape, or form. This is the first time I've heard of Sicilian troops taking part.
Murray would now mount a diversionary landing on the Mediterranean coast to coincide with Wellington's advance and prevent Suchet sending reinforcements north.
Okay.
Wellington had also counted on large-scale support from Spanish regular forces, of which he was, since November 1812, theoretically commander-in-chief. But the Spanish Cortes, based in Cadiz, was deeply divided.
Of course.
Many still highly suspicious of British motives. The result was that Wellington would only receive direct support from a few reliable Spanish divisions.
Better than nothing.
Fortunately, he would receive considerable Spanish support from the guerrillas, now better armed, organized, and operating in greater numbers than ever before. A large area of Valencia had effectively been liberated by El Fraile, the Friar. Esposimina had captured major towns in Navarre and was currently keeping General Clausel's Army of the North busy, while Juan Martín Díaz, aka El Empecinado, was tying down large numbers of French troops near Madrid.
So the guerrillas kind of interest me a lot too, because basically, I mean, maybe this is the wrong wording for it, but they all seem like their own little kind of like warlord. I don't know, maybe there's a different word, but you know what I mean? Like their own individual little like fief almost. Like they have their own army, their own sort of leadership. And my question is, if anybody in the comments can answer this, did any of these, these leaders that they're talking about here, the guerrilla leaders, like this guy, did they end up becoming more than a guerrilla leader, as time went on? Or did the people of Spain see these guerrilla leaders as like their heroes? Or as time went on, did they see them more as like a nuisance? If anybody can kind of give me a little sort of insight on that, I'd appreciate that. Thank you. I shall never see you again. Okay. Well, confidence.
On the 22nd of May, Wellington bid farewell to Portugal and began his advance. 4 days later, he was in Salamanca, from where he joined the northern wing of his army under Sir Thomas Graham. Joseph and Jourdan expected Wellington's main thrust to come from Salamanca, so planned to defend the line of the Douro River. But Graham's rapid advance north of the river meant they'd already been outflanked, and they ordered a retreat. By a series of brilliant marches, Wellington continued threatening the French right flank, forcing Joseph to keep falling back. Wellington's army was able to use small roads and mountain tracks north of the main highway, which the French had dismissed as impassable. But thanks to his Spanish allies, Wellington knew better.
Okay.
Backed by British sea power, he was also now able to switch his supply base from Lisbon to Santander, drastically reducing the length of his supply lines.
Yeah.
Another feat the French had written off as impossible. At the Ebro River, the French found themselves outflanked yet again and fell back to Vitoria. Here, Joseph decided that he must make his stand. The Zadorra River valley west of Vitoria seemed to offer a strong defensive position. Expecting an attack from the west, French forces were drawn up in 3 lines. General Gazon's Army of the South formed the first line. Then General d'Erlon's Army of the Centre. Then General Rey's Army of Portugal. Joseph hoped that he could at least buy time for the vast wagon convoy assembled east of the city to get away. It contained not only military supplies, but his government's treasury. And, as satirized by this contemporary British cartoon, the accumulated loot of 5 years' French occupation of Spain.
That's wild.
Including priceless works of art, jewels, and antiques. He also expected General Clausel to arrive with 20,000 reinforcements any day. However, thanks to the guerrillas, Wellington was better informed of Clausel's whereabouts than Joseph himself.
The guerrillas are really coming in clutch, man. Like, everything I've seen so far, kind of like basically the key to success, really.
Knowing that Clausel couldn't reach Joseph before the 22nd of June, he decided to attack on the 21st. The day before, French patrols reported enemy troop movement to the north, so Rey's troops were moved to cover any threat to the army's line of communications. Apart from one division, which left to escort part of the wagon convoy to France. An odd decision that deprived the army of 4,000 men on the eve of battle.
That's a lot of men, too.
Marshal Jourdan had been bedridden with fever that day. The next morning, he reconnoitred the army's position with King Joseph. They agreed that their position was overextended and should be shortened. But by the time their orders reached General Gazan, it was too late. He was already under attack.
All right, let's get this party started.
Wellington, enjoying the advantage in numbers for once, had decided to attack in 4 columns across a 10-mile front, with General Graham's left-hand column threatening Joseph's line of retreat. It was a bold plan, with the potential to trap and destroy Joseph's army, but required careful coordination and precise timing. Fortunately, the French had not thought it necessary to destroy any of the bridges over the Zadorra River, which was also fordable in several places.
What a freaking mess up that was.
At 8 a.m., General Hill's column began its attack on the Allied right. Spanish and British troops advanced up the western heights of Puebla, driving off French skirmishers and forcing General Gazan to send reinforcements to secure his left flank. Hill's troops then seized the village of Subiana, but French cannon fire and counterattacks prevented any further advance. Convinced that Hill's attack was the main assault, and that troop movements to the north were probably a diversion, Jourdan continued to send troops from the center to reinforce the left. This was exactly what Wellington wanted. But at 11 a.m., he was waiting with growing impatience for his other columns to go into action. Lord Dalhousie's 7th Division, supposed to be leading the attack by the center-left column, had got held up in the mountains. While further east, Graham's flanking move had got off to a cautious start. But seeing the size of the approaching force, General Rey decided to pull back his troops across the Zadorra River. This encouraged Graham to get things moving.
Okay.
Colonel Longa's Spanish division advanced on Durana, held by Spanish troops loyal to King Joseph, and a bitter struggle for the village ensued. British and Portuguese infantry advanced against Gamara Mayor. They were soon engaged in bloody street fighting with the French. This scene shows an attack by the 4th King's Own Regiment of Foot and the 47th Lancashire Regiment.
There you go.
They succeeded in driving the French out of the village. They could not cross its bridge over the Zadorra, which was expertly covered by French guns.
Okay. Come on, ye rascals, come on, ye fightin' villains. General Sir Thomas Picton. I like that. That gives some character to it, you know what I mean? It's not just like, hey, fight. Come on, ye fightin' villains.
Around noon, a Spanish peasant informed Wellington that the bridge at Tres Puentes was completely unguarded. He immediately ordered Kempt's elite light infantry brigade to dash across it and secure a bridgehead. But there was still little sign of Dalhousie's 7th Division. General Picton, the notoriously short-tempered commander of the fighting 3rd Division, ran out of patience. Fed up with waiting for Dalhousie, he ordered his men to advance. They charged across the Mendoza Bridge and a nearby ford, driving back light French defenses. General Gazan, with his left flank pinned down at Subiana, was now about to be outflanked on his right, and had no option but to pull back his troops. Wellington's army was now crossing the Zadorra River in force. Heavy fighting continued to rage on the heights of Puebla, but here the French also had to give ground to maintain the cohesion of their new line. Scottish Highlanders and Connaught Rangers, supported by riflemen and Portuguese troops, now stormed the village of Avignon, routing the defenders, who retreated southeast. And a gap began to emerge in the French centre between Gazon's army of the south and d'Erlon's army of the centre. The Allied advance continued, with heavy pressure on both French flanks. Wellington's army appeared to be building unstoppable momentum, with Graham's column poised to cut off Joseph's escape.
Getting a little sticky out there. Artillery and musketry were heard in one continuous, uninterrupted volume of sound. The fire had already become exceedingly violent. Captain Andrew Leith-Hay. Yeah, this is I mean, they're pressed on all sides, basically. This is a pretty dangerous situation, it looks like, for the French.
By 4 p.m., Wellington's army was formed up across the Zadorra, ready to strike a decisive blow. But his infantry came under heavy fire from 76 French guns, blasting great holes in their ranks. Allied guns were brought forward to provide support. The biggest artillery duel of the Peninsular War began.
Crazy.
More than 70 guns on each side. Allied skirmishers, exploiting the gap in the French centre near Gomecha, were able to work their way behind the French guns and shoot down their crews. Gazon found himself threatened on both flanks. But instead of trying to close up with d'Erlon to his north, on his own initiative he ordered a retreat that left d'Erlon's own left flank completely exposed. Around the same time, Longa's Spanish troops finally captured Durana, and rumors swept the French army that their escape route had been cut. D'Erlon's army of the centre fought on bravely, withdrawing to another new defensive line just 1 mile west of Vitoria. French guns kept up a steady fire on the advancing Allied lines, but once more the position was outflanked. Around 5:30 p.m., King Joseph bowed to the inevitable and ordered a general retreat.
Yeah, what can you do? $5 million were abandoned by the French and left upon the ground. Ensign George Bell. Yeah, I mean, what can you do? I mean, if you're the French, I mean, you're being pressed on all sides. You're being outflanked all the time. You're having some very big difficulties in communication, obviously, with that one guy retreating without sort of linking up with the other general or commander. You know, one of those things where that's not good, obviously, and if you can't have cohesion, you don't really have much.
As the main road to France had now been cut by Longa's Spanish troops, the army would have to retreat east towards Pamplona along a single narrow road with boggy fields on either side. Bad enough for thousands of troops and guns, but there had been no attempt to move off the army's enormous convoy of wagons earlier in the day.
Okay.
The result was pandemonium, as military units and artillery tried to force their way through the streets of Vitoria and the congested lanes and fields beyond. The task of forming a rearguard fell to General Reyes' army of Portugal, which conducted an organized withdrawal covered by its cavalry. Wellington hoped that Graham's column would now be surging across the Zadorra River to cut off the French army's retreat. But Graham, overestimating the enemy's strength, continued to take a cautious approach.
Okay.
East of Vitoria, the French retreat descended into total chaos. The single narrow road became blocked. Wagons that took to the fields got stuck and were abandoned. Allied cavalry fell upon this confused mass, spreading panic and meeting little serious opposition. King Joseph and Marshal Jourdan themselves narrowly escaped capture.
Wow.
Among the abandoned wagons, many civilians, including officers, wives and children, priceless paintings, jewels and furniture, and more than 5 million gold francs.
Jesus.
Troops on both sides broke ranks and dived into an orgy of plundering. One British officer described the scene. About dusk, the head of our column came suddenly on some wagons which had been abandoned by the enemy. Someone called out, "They are money carts." No sooner were the words uttered than the division broke as if by word of command, and in an instant the covers disappeared from the wagons, and nothing was seen but a mass of inverted legs, while the arms were groping for dollars. For money it certainly was.
I mean, I understand, like, put yourself in their shoes. You probably don't get paid that much, like as a soldier, I mean, really. And you see quite easy pickings right in front of you. You know, I'm not going to talk about the moral things, you know, the moral choice of whether it's right or wrong. Obviously, I think we all can sort of figure that out for ourselves. But I can understand why there would be just a massive breakdown of discipline, because you have this opportunity in front of you and it's very tempting. All this art, all this money, these priceless artifacts, these, you know, jewelry and whatever. Like this guy's holding up a necklace. It's like, you know, if you were there, it would be very difficult to not take part in that, I think. I think all of us would probably agree with that.
The scene was disgraceful, but at the same time,
Yeah.
ludicrous. Wellington, however, was furious.
Yeah, I suppose.
Not only did the plundering delay pursuit of the enemy, but giant sums of cash, which might have paid for his army's supplies, vanished into private pockets instead.
Well, here's the thing, too. I understand why he's the commander. He's angry. But he's also, like, nobility. So he doesn't really have to worry about money. You know? So from that perspective, it's like, your soldiers are, I mean, he's the one who quoted saying they're scum of the earth. And during some of the battles in Spain, they were looting, and, you know, British soldiers were looting and committing some very immoral acts. So if you look at it from that perspective, it's like, you know, he's a nobility. He has money. I'm sure nobles had money. I'm sure they get paid well. And he's a commander. So for him, it's like money is not really a big deal. But for these rest of these guys who might not see very much money throughout their life, you know.
Of 5.5 million francs, only 250,000 were ever recovered by the army.
That's a huge loss of money.
Vitoria was a great victory for the coalition. Not as crushing as it might have been, reflected in relatively light French casualties. But in the chaotic retreat that followed, the Allies did capture all but 2 of 153 French guns.
Wow.
And even Jourdan's Marshal's bateau.
Okay. You have sent me among the trophies of your unrivaled fame the baton of a French marshal, and I send you in return that of England. The British Army will hail it with rapturous enthusiasm. The Prince Regent, the Field Marshal Lord Wellington. Yeah. For everybody at home in you know, Britain, it's like this is a huge, you know, Wellington's the superstar.
French military power in Iberia was broken. The Bonapartist Kingdom of Spain was at an end. Joseph returned to France to face his brother's criticism. Marshal Jourdan retired from active service. Napoleon sent Marshal Soult to replace them, but even his shrewd military mind could not turn the tide in Spain. Counterattacks to relieve the French garrisons at Pamplona and San Sebastian were defeated.
Wow.
That autumn, Wellington began what proved an unstoppable advance across the Pyrenees and into France. In southern Spain, where Marshal Suchet remained undefeated, the disaster at Vitoria forced him also to withdraw towards the frontier,
All right.
leaving behind just a few isolated garrisons.
Good job, Suchet.
After a bitter 5-year struggle, the Allies had brought the Peninsular War, to the Spanish their War of Independence, to a victorious conclusion. It had been a long, hard road, steeped in blood and suffering. The alliance between Britain and Spain had been particularly treacherous to navigate. But ultimately, both nations had fought together with Portugal to drive the French back across the Pyrenees. New research provides a clearer insight than ever into the huge attrition of French manpower in Iberia. An estimated total of 260,000 lives lost. 3/4 died of sickness.
Yeah.
Of
well,
approximately 66,000 deaths from combat, 43% were in actions against Spanish regular forces, 38% fighting British-led armies, and 19% fighting guerrillas. By contrast, British military deaths are estimated at 52,000, Portuguese 15,000, with many more thousands of civilian deaths, while Spanish deaths are unknown, though the country as a whole may have lost as many as 500,000 lives
Man.
in 5 years of war and occupation.
Rest in peace to those guys.
For Napoleon, this disaster had been an unnecessary and largely self-inflicted wound,
Yeah.
an intervention born of arrogance and false assumptions, with dire strategic consequences. But as the Napoleonic Empire crumbled in Spain, an even greater struggle neared its climax in Central Europe, where Napoleon faced the most powerful coalition of his enemies yet. If the French Emperor was victorious in Germany, Wellington might soon be scrambling back across the Pyrenees. The fate of Europe was about to be decided at the Battle of Leipzig.
All right.
Thank you to History March for creating.
Thank you to Epic History TV, History March, all the patrons, and the music. The music just is banging on all these freaking episodes, man. It's just, it's so exhilarating, the music. The artwork is great. Thank you to everybody there for making all this so we can learn and watch together here. But yeah, I mean, big shout out and mad respect to the Spanish and the Portuguese for just some really hardcore fighting and resistance. Big respect to the British and Wellington and specifically for tenaciously fighting. I mean, it wasn't easy, obviously, and there was many setbacks, but they were able to push them out. And now we'll see what Napoleon will do here in Germany at Leipzig, and I'm excited for this. And I know I've had some comments, people saying this is one of their favorite episodes, or most excited episodes. So I'm excited with you. Thank you guys for stopping by, commenting, subscribing. I appreciate it so much, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace. Be safe. Drive under the speed limit, please, or drive the speed limit. Wear your seatbelt. Don't drink and drive. You know the spiel. We want you around, okay? You're needed here, so be safe in this world. Bye.